In late June 2025, the U.S. state of Texas faced a catastrophe that left deep emotional and physical scars. In particular, near Camp Mystic, a beloved summer retreat nestled in the Texas Hill Country, a sudden flash flood tore through the region after days of relentless rain. What began as a peaceful summer evening quickly turned into a nightmare. Torrents of water, fed by overflowing rivers and creeks, engulfed cabins, uprooted trees, and swept away cars, structures, and tragically lives. Parents who had sent their children to camp for growth, joy, and friendship were soon receiving calls that shattered their worlds. Emergency responders worked around the clock, but the storm was fierce, the terrain treacherous, and the devastation massive. Entire families have been displaced. Dozens are dead or missing. The emotional weight is heavy not only on Texas but on the nation. And in the heart of West Africa, one man took notice. In an unexpected but deeply moving show of solidarity, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, leader of Burkina Faso and a rising voice of African sovereignty, sent a public message to the United States, offering condolences to those affected by the Camp Mystic flash flood. Speaking from Ouagadougou, Traoré addressed the people of Texas with sincerity and compassion. To the families who have lost loved ones in this tragedy, my heart, along with the hearts of millions across Burkina Faso and Africa, aches with you. In moments like this, we are reminded that humanity is one body. When one part is wounded, all feel the pain. It is rare for an African leader, especially one not closely aligned with U.S. foreign policy, to reach across continents during an American crisis. But for Traoré, this wasn't about politics. It was about principle. The principle of shared grief, global humanity, and moral leadership. He went on to recognize the significance of Camp Mystic as more than a location. This was not just a place of recreation. It was a sanctuary of youth, learning, and friendship. It breaks our hearts to know that laughter turned to fear and joy to mourning in just one night. Traoré's bold call to Donald Trump, but the message did not end with condolences. In a bold and surprising moment, Captain Traoré called upon the U.S. President Donald Trump to step forward and take leadership in addressing the crisis. President Trump, I speak not only as an African leader but as a man who has seen firsthand the cost of delay, of silence, and of abandonment during national crises. I call on you not for politics, not for show, but for people. These citizens of Texas need immediate action, coordination, and comfort. They need a strong voice to rally the nation. Traoré's appeal to Trump was not an endorsement of ideology, it was a challenge to moral responsibility. He reminded the world that natural disasters transcend politics, and so must the response. Whether Democrat or Republican, African or American, Traoré believes that those with platforms must use their influence for protection, not posture. He urged Trump to use his network, visibility, and sway among state officials to mobilize emergency aid and resources, coordinate shelters for displaced families, create a long-term plan to rebuild the affected regions, support grieving families and raise funds through his donor base. Some may ask, why is the president of Burkina Faso speaking on a flood in Texas, thousands of miles away? To that, Traoré had a simple answer. Because when we remain silent about suffering, especially suffering that we have the voice to address, we become complicit in global apathy. The flood in Texas may not seem to impact Africa directly, but the climate crisis of which this flood is a symptom, does. Flash floods in the Sahel have become more frequent and deadly. Just as African nations suffer from desertification and droughts, so too does the U.S. face hurricanes, floods, and extreme weather. We are not so different, said Traoré. Our soil is drying, your rivers are overflowing. The earth is speaking and we must listen together. Camp Mystic, located near the Guadalupe River in Hunt, Texas, has long been a summer sanctuary for generations of young. Rooted in tradition, faith, and community, the camp offered a place to disconnect from the digital world and reconnect with nature. This year it was supposed to be no different, until the sky opened with fury. Dozens of campers, counselors, and staff were caught in the deluge. Helicopters scoured the area for survivors. First responders fought rushing currents to save lives. In the end, many lives were lost. Homes were destroyed. Communities broken. To Captain Traoré, this wasn't just a natural disaster. It was a human story that deserved acknowledgement and global mourning. When children suffer, when families lose, when communities drown, it is not a Texan loss. It is a human loss. And I will not look away. Traoré's message resonated with many across Africa who have themselves lived through floods, landslides, and displaced communities. In 2022, floods across Nigeria, Chad, and Burkina Faso killed hundreds and displaced over 1 million people. Crops were destroyed. Disease followed. The world barely noticed. In a moment of poetic justice, an African leader now stands. In empathy with the global North, reminding the world that grief is a universal language. We know what it is to be forgotten in tragedy. That is why we cannot forget others. Traoré also made a passionate appeal for global climate accountability, stating, "This flood is not just the work of nature. It is the consequence of policies, industries, and behaviors that have heated our planet. Let us not simply cry over lost lives. Let us change the systems that are killing them." At the end of his statement, Traoré turned towards something greater than politics or climate debates. He called for a new moral globalism, not one based on trade or military alliances, but on human concern. Let us break the myth that continents are separate. Texas matters to us. Africa should matter to you. Only when the pain of others becomes our pain will we become truly human. He urged African communities to pray for Texas, and for African diasporas in the U.S. to offer help, volunteer, and donate where they can. And in an unexpected gesture, he announced a symbolic emergency fund from Burkina Faso's government. Though we are small and still rebuilding, we will send what we can to Texas not because they need it from us, but because we choose to give it. The message went viral. In the U.S., some saw Traoré's message as a rare show of humble statesmanship from an African leader not tied to Western politics. Social media users praised the speech, calling it one of the most human responses to an American tragedy in years. In Africa, the speech was seen as a turning point, proof that African voices can be global voices, not just when the West speaks on African issues, but when Africa speaks on world events. Captain Traoré's message is more than a soundbite. It's a challenge to all world leaders, from Biden to Trump, Macron to Xi, to rise above borders, blame, and bureaucracy. As Texas begins the long road to recovery, perhaps what it needs most is not just funds or speeches, but the shared belief that their pain is seen, their loss acknowledged, and their healing supported from every corner of the world. Let this not be another forgotten flood. Let this be the moment we remember what binds us, not just as nations but as people. I stand with Texas. I mourn with you. And I call on all those with power to rise, for those who no longer can. Like, share, and subscribe to African Revolutionary Lens, your source for voices that matter. Stay informed. Stay connected. And never stay silent.